and convinced NASA and other government agencies to sponsor Lilly financially. With the help of anthropologist Gregory Bateson, John C. Lilly would create the Dolphin House, where he would attempt to learn how to speak.
Niggas was sponsoring niggas was sponsoring this because of, and what you ended up doing was giving a dolphin acid and a handy. We got Casual Geographic, aka Hood Nature. This is the insane experiment that broke a dolphin's heart. What? I didn't even read the title.
Video was sponsored by absolutely no one, because no one in their right mind would sponsor this.
Nah, this is crazy.
Well, butterfly on a corn cob, I see that I've romanticized a wild animal the same way Margaret Howe did when she off that dolphin in the 1960s. Both she and I assaulted a captive creature, then expected it to be reciprocal. Well, joopity boop, time to die.
What?
You know, we've done some really questionable things in the name of science. Like that time legitimate attempts at a human Z were made, or that time a psychologist raised a chimp and a human baby together to see what would happen. We're gonna get back to that, but the answer is nothing good. And of course, that time we gave dolphins acid and hand service, all for a very questionable science project. You see, the 60s were a special time. America and the Soviet Union were—
I know the fuck not. Did he just say that Americans gave dolphins a handy while the dolphin was on acid? What the fuck were we? What do you accomplish? What do you I don't. What was the outcome you was expecting? Oh no, we need to be put down. I'm not gonna lie. We're detrimental to the fucking environment, because what the fuck are we doing?
in the midst of a meat measuring contest all the way up into space, and at the same time, there was a question as to whether humans could learn to communicate with animals as well as we do with each other. And renowned neuroscientist John C. Lilly fully took on the task of trying to bridge the gap between the man and animal language barrier. Now, I mentioned his job to show he wasn't just some acid-dropping self-stereotype of the 60s. Don't get me wrong, he was, but he was also a contributing member of the scientific community. In fact, he was the one who invented sensory deprivation tanks, which he did acid in. Anyway, he was interested in possible human-animal communication, but also in animal intelligence. And that's how dolphins got an invite to this party. At the time, John Lilly saw them as the smartest things on the planet that weren't human. And as a neuroscientist, he was especially drawn to the dolphin's brain. Not only do cetaceans have
In a rhino's brain for some reason? Aren't rhinos dumb, low-key?
the largest brains of any animal, bottlenose dolphins have a brain 4 to 5 times larger than what you would expect for an animal their size. But what really made Lilly eureka himself was while he was observing and researching dolphins and talking to himself, he realized that the dolphins seemed like they were imitating his voice. And that convinced him that the dolphins were trying to speak to him. And with their high intelligence, John C. Lilly figured that if we could somehow find a way to communicate with dolphins, that could lead to us finding a way to talk to aliens, which was an Olympic gymnast level stretch, but hindsight's 2020, and unfortunately this was the 1960s. Either way, depending on how you look at it, this was both the best and worst thing that ever happened to his career. The implication of extraterrestrial communication convinced NASA and other government agencies to sponsor Lilly financially. With the help of anthropologist Gregory Bateson, John C. Lilly would create the Dolphin House, where he would attempt to learn how to speak to—
Niggas was sponsoring niggas was sponsoring this nigga because of, and what you ended up doing was giving a dolphin acid and a handy. They was probably giving this nigga millions of dollars, and he's giving dolphins acid and handies. Dog, yo, you can't make this shit. Yo, you can't make this shit up, bro. You can't. The
dolphins. That's how the experiment started, but you don't want to hear about that. You want to get to the part where we started slipping dolphins acid. Oh, trust me, we're gonna get to that. Just bear with me. The Dolphin House was built in the US Virgin Islands, and you're gonna see why that was actually very ironic. It's like having a gay friend on Dick Street. That's not a joke, by the way. When I went to college, there was a gay fraternity located on DIX Dick Street. That is a true story. So in this experiment, there were 3 dolphins. There was Sissy, the big sister and leader of the group, Pam, the shy introvert, and a young immature male named Peter. And again, given the circumstances, that name would be so ironic you'd swear it was part of a sick joke. But there was another key character to this story, and that was a Miss Margaret Howe Lovett. Margaret never had any formal scientific training, but apparently she was a natural at observing and documenting animal behavior. So they brought her in and had her work with the one male dolphin, Peter, since he was the only one out of the three that never had any human sound training. So Margaret's goal would be to teach Peter how to speak English the same way a mother would to her child. She would slowly count to 3 and have Peter repeat after her. She'd say all the vowels in the alphabet and try to get Peter to mimic her.
1, 2, 3. You can do better, Peter.
And on some level this made sense since mimicry is how baby dolphins learn how to dolphin from their mothers. But here's the thing with dolphins. In the wild, they communicate with each other through a series of clicks, squeaks, and whistles, and most of that's in the water. But to talk to humans through air, the dolphins would have to make noises through their blowholes. It's like if I challenge you to speak perfect English, but without using your mouth. So for anatomical reasons, Peter was pretty much screwed. Figuratively, the literal is coming. Like
Stop,
Peter.
please.
I'll say one thing though, say what you want about Margaret, but she was committed. She painted her face white and her lips black so Peter could see the shape and movement of her mouth while she was making the noises so he could try to replicate that with his blowhole. She also decided to move in with Peter full time to maximize her time with him. And slowly, Peter was actually getting better at mimicking her.
August 18, this is the morning lesson with Peter. Hello. Hello.
What the fuck?
Which made John C. Lilly Eureka himself for the second time. News about this Dolphin English project got out and people were curious, and John C. Lilly was seen as a visionary. It even got the attention of world-renowned astronomer Carl frickin' Sagan. The frickin' is silent. Now I'd like to point out that at this point this was a several thousand if not $1,000,000 NASA-funded experiment. Like people's careers and reputations were hanging on this. Yet nobody stopped to think that it might be physically impossible for dolphins to produce the sounds needed to speak English, especially from an air anus on its head. And keep in mind, John C. Lilly was a neuroscientist. One of the professions you pray your siblings or cousins never get because then your parents will never let you forget it. And apparently there was some disconnect. Gregory Bateson was like, why are we teaching them English when we should be learning how they speak to each other? He even had the idea of putting 2 dolphins in 2 tanks where they couldn't see each other but could communicate through sound. That way we could study the sound and figure out dolphin language. Lilly's response was, nah, we teach them English.
So how can we learn how can we learn how to communicate with dolphins? Give them mind-altering substances. Give them hand jobs. Why don't we just learn their language? Oh my God.
You know, naked mole rats spend their entire lives using their teeth as shovels underground, and even they have less tunnel vision. And ironically, they might have actually had better luck if they used an animal like a raven or a parrot or even a seal. You know, animals that are actually capable of mimicking human speech.
What the fuck?
But I guess dolphins were the hill to die on. So Margaret and Peter kept on with the lessons, but soon there would be another problem. Peter was a young, sexually immature male with the attention span of one. So how do you get a hormonal teenager going through
Oh no. No.
puberty to listen to you? Yep, we finally made it to that part. So whenever Peter would get distracted, Margaret would send him downstairs to play with Pam and Sissy. But dolphins can mate several times a day, if not an hour, and the constant disruptions were starting to slow their progress down, so Margaret figured she could kill 2 birds with 1 stroke. Stroke. 2 things happened after that. Peter got a job he never applied for, and after that, the only virgin on the premises was the very island itself. Playing tug-of-war with Little Peter meant Margaret had more time to teach Big Peter English, and as a species that often uses decapitated fish, I'm sure Peter wasn't complaining. So now Margaret had a full-time job teaching Peter English while also learning anatomy and chemistry part-time.
Oh, you nasty bitch. She was just giving them the handies. Oh my God.
Patience was starting to run thin because there was another thing a group of scientists somehow never thought of. You could teach a dolphin how to speak English, but that doesn't mean he'll understand any of it because mimicry isn't comprehension. Any pretentious dude in the bar can say E equals MC squared, ask him what it actually means, and watch how fast his face falls.
Facts.
What started as an experiment to learn to communicate with a highly intelligent non-human creature quickly devolved into an R-rated game of Simon Says, except with more hand service and drugs. And now we're at that part of the story. You see, at this point, John Lilly was under a lot of pressure. Unlike Peter, financial backers had started to pull out, and Gregory Bateson, who was already skeptical to begin with, was now starting to seriously wonder just how far they were willing to go for science. Soon he'd get his answer. just not the one he wanted. Like I said, the 60s were a different time, and around this time, a fun little thing known as lysergic acid diethylamide was quickly gaining traction as a potentially mind-altering, conscious-expanding substance. John Lilly would frequently participate in the consumption of a little slice of delight, which he would take while in the sensory deprivation tank. It's not like he was a stranger to such activity. John Lilly wrote his first book, Man and Dolphin, over the course of one weekend while off amphetamines. So when he hit a roadblock in his research, Lilly was desperate, and his Hail Mary, let's give Dolphins LSD and see what happens. Margaret wasn't having any of that and demanded that he keep that nonsense away from Peter, but at the time Margaret was basically a 24-year-old intern and John C. Lilly was still the big-time scientist. And like I said, hindsight's 20/20 and logic had real estate in his blind spot. So John took Peter along with Pam and Sissy on a lovely Saturday drive and recorded what happened. And apparently, nothing. Dolphins might have been slightly noisier, but pretty much nothing to record.
Hey, real quick. Hate to interrupt your video, but I got some news. You see the ambiance here? That means it's freaking October, man. I meant to do this on the 1st, but I'm sorry. Real quick. We got Halloween merch, man. And I need you to check it out because it's only here for October, okay? There is a sticker, there's a t-shirt, and there is a hoodie. I had a drawer go all out for me, you know what I'm saying, with the classic nasty over the top, little Luna right there and the ice cream, you know what I'm saying, got the Jason mask, and me right there. There's stickers, there's t-shirts, and there is hoodies, man. And make sure you go grab you one. It's only here for October. Listen, all my merch drops are never coming back. They're never coming back, okay? So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Never again will you be able to get it. Only October. The rest of this merch is gone on the 9th, so make sure you pick it up before it's too late. Make sure you guys are go getting your merch, and link is in the description. Y'all enjoy the rest of your video, man. Peace. The thing is, we got too much money. There's too much money on Earth to be funding these nonsense ass experiments, because like, what the fuck did you gain from this? What did you gain?
Lilly was beyond down bad, and he was desperate for a response, and he knew that dolphins have an incredible sense of hearing. So he got out a jackhammer, because at this point I don't think this was even about dolphins anymore. I think he just wanted to do acid. And this was the 60s, it's not like you needed an excuse for that kind of thing. So John Lilly pulled out a jackhammer and just started jacking away, an activity I'm sure that room had seen more than enough of. And the noise didn't seem to do anything but probably ruined whatever trip the dolphins were on. At this point, Gregory Bateson had seen more than enough. Remember how I said he started to wonder how far they were willing to go? Well, apparently his line in the sand was giving dolphins a little sense of direction. If the experiment was a train and science was the tracks, at this point this thing was halfway down the Pacific, so he packed up and left. It was kind of wraps for the entire experiment after that. At one point, Lilly tried communicating with the dolphins telepathically, so safe to say the acid had won. And as the experiment was called off and the staff separated, the dolphins were shipped out. So here's where a lot of the facts got left out for the sake of the story. So it's popular belief that after
Came to say, love you. Oh, you, Todd, you love me? Hope you good. Bye, bitch. Bye, you naked faced man. I saw that you shaved your beard. You look gross. You look like you got what's that stash called? You got a creepy pedo stash. You look like I'm gonna keep my kids 5 feet. You know what I'm saying? Love you, Todd. Just can't take the candy. We just can't take the candy. When the beard grows back, I'll take the candy.
After the experiment ended and Peter was separated from Margaret, he proceeded to die of a broken heart. And from horny. Now, part of that is probably true.
What?
Let's just put it this way. Peter had gotten used to getting a special job every day, and he went from that to being painfully unemployed. Forget unemployed, bro was in a recession. And there's the fact that Peter very likely caught feelings for this woman that he had been around 24/7. But here's the part people leave out. Peter was shipped out to a former bank building in Miami to live. His new home was a tight, cramped tank that he could barely turn around in with little, if any, natural light. Also, think of how bad public bathrooms smell, and then imagine an animal that uses the bathroom 5 times more than any human. So yeah, Peter got effed over, only this time it was completely figurative. Another fact about dolphins is they aren't involuntary breathers like us. Every breath they take is a conscious choice. It's why dolphins can only sleep by resting half their brain at a time, otherwise they would just not breathe and flatline themselves. We know this because when John Lilly operated on dolphins to observe their brain and put them under anesthesia, the dolphins ended up suffocating. So Peter made the executive decision to delete himself, likely due to depression. Margaret didn't do much better. Because when Hustler magazine found out about her and Peter and what she did to Peter, they wrote a story on her, and let's just say it wasn't a good look. Also, did
Oh
I
my
mention she
God,
never
this-
got paid for this? Like, imagine your entire legacy, like what you're gonna leave on this earth was that you had relations with a wild animal and didn't even get paid for it. So I guess both she and Peter got screwed. Peter's death wasn't even the last time something like this would happen. Kathy was a dolphin who played flipper, and once the show ended and she was moved to an isolated pen, she too would proceed to cross her name off the census. Maybe it's a good thing we never learned how to talk to dolphins, because I imagine they
fuck?
wouldn't have much positive to say. They'd
Hell
probably
no.
call John Lilly their Hitler. Speaking of him, he continued to experiment, but when a light seasoning of dope became illegal, he started doing ketamine. And like I said, we've
Oh
done
my
some
God.
sick things for science. Like when psychologist Winthrop Kellogg decided to raise his human baby son alongside a female chimp named Guada, see what would happen. What happened was his human son started acting feral, walking on all fours, grunting like Gua, and even biting people. When the experiment ended and they sent off the female chimp that they had raised as a daughter to be used in more experiments, Gua would flatline to pneumonia a couple months later, and the boy she was raised with, Donald, would grow up to be a psychiatrist, until he would also delete himself at the age of 43. So I guess the theme of this
That is
video is
crazy.
sometimes science goes way too far. And as groundbreaking as it was, it somehow wouldn't be the last time someone publicly had relations with a dolphin. Like this
What?
man had an entire relationship with a dolphin named Dolly that he claimed seduced him. Only difference was they went way past handwork, and to my knowledge, no substances were involved. Now, in fairness to him, he did have to deal with some pretty heavy trauma as a kid, namely when he was violated by a psychiatrist at the age of 5, according to a podcast he was on that I watched. Speaking of which, like the video. I watched it and that was not pleasant. And I get that different people cope in different ways, but did it really have to involve backdooring a dolphin? Like, how would you even, like logistically, how would you even get the pieces to, you know, we're not even going down that rabbit hole. Because he might try to go in there too. Now, Lilly's experiment was famous for all the wrong reasons, but it did have some positive effects. A lot of
my
what we understand
God.
about the intelligence of dolphins and cetaceans in general came from his work, and it really helped shift the public perception of them. That shift is likely what led to the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972. Lilly would
my-
also go on to campaign against the use of dolphins in captivity, which was pretty admirable, but at the same time, like, bro, you gave dolphins acid, you get
Right.
no more talk time after that. However, a lot of people see this project as a massive waste of time and resources. I disagree. The point of the experiment was to see if dolphins could learn to speak English, and now thanks to him, we know they can't. Because drunk history said it best. You wouldn't just kidnap a Japanese man and keep him from his family and give him hand service that he didn't ask for and a little surprise dose that he definitely didn't ask for and suddenly expect him to start belting out fluent English. But that's gonna do it for this video.
That
For more
is
consistent
crazy.
content, be sure to follow my Instagram and TikTok. I try to post daily on both. And if you would like to further support this channel, my Patreon's also gonna be in the description.
Patreon.
Because let's be real, ain't no way YouTube finna let me monetize this. Either way, drink water, hug your mother, don't hug a dolphin, because apparently it could lead to more than you're equipped to deal with. And
Yeah.
I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, nah, that is, yeah. I ain't gonna lie, I could have went my whole life without that information, but now that I know, America, you got some sick mofos, bro. There's some sick individuals, bro. Sick. Handies and acid, I can do without.